we leave is that mark and what people think about us or how they feel or how they were affected by us when we die. So if it's negative, that's a shame. And if it's positive, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yep, exactly. All right, Marlene, thank you so much for being on the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Infinite Abilities Podcast. I am your host, Nick Earhart, and we are here to encourage each other to find our own unique abilities. Let's go. All right, on today's episode, we have Marlene, and she is so awesome. I can't wait for her to tell her story and help you guys out. So, Marlene, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Hi, Nick. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this. So my name is Marlene Godsey, and I am a cultural inclusivity trainer. And what that really, all those big words just mean is that I work with individuals and organizations and just really teach them how to master the art of creating relationships in culturally diverse environments.
Okay, that's awesome and so important, and there's a lot of different things that I know you help with, so that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, the world is changing so quickly, and there's such a need for professionals to really just adapt the way they've been doing things to just be more inclusive for a more diverse audience. And so that's not a skill that a lot of people have naturally. It's something they have to learn how to do. And, it's a need that's there and it's not really getting fulfilled.
Yep. So, when you work with a client, what's usually the first thing that you start with?
The very first thing, I generally will do a small bit of education around diversity equity because I like to make sure that they understand why things are the way they are, why there is separation and division and segregation to this day still, why there is fear of different cultures and stereotypes. And I like to kind of break down even things like redlining and explaining, how the projects were built and how things have been built systemically to exclude groups of people in American history. So I think starting there is really like a foundation.
Yeah, when you say redlining, that's a term that I haven't heard. What exactly is that?
Yeah, it goes really in depth, but basically what redlining is, back in the day when people were allowed to be free, populations of people, African American population, were only allowed to live in certain areas, which are now known today as like the projects. So while people of dominant culture, which refers to Caucasian population in the United States, were allowed to buy houses, certain areas were redlined off to where only African Americans were allowed to live in that area, and they were generally really poor areas. The houses and the property and the apartments were really, really bad shape. And so they condensed everybody into an area. So if you were successful, let's say entrepreneur, business owner, and you were African American, you were not allowed to buy a house in a certain area, which tended to be the nicer areas. So it's called redlining.
Wow.
And so it created the projects that we see today.
Yeah. And do you know when redlining ended?
I mean, in some respects, it still exists today. Realistically, when we hear about certain things, when we see certain areas and how they are very predominantly Caucasian, redlining is still in existence, and that's where we start looking at things like discrimination. Where if let's say a black male goes to a certain condo association, he's interested in buying a condo, and they have rules, especially in New York, we see this, they have rules where they have to accept certain individuals into that building. And so we see that to this day where people will be, banned from renting or buying in areas, and that's still redlining to this day.
Wow. I didn't know it was still going on. I mean, I know there's a lot of, on what you want to call it, racism still goes on, and it's sad. There's no need for it these days, you know.
Exactly. And we all have the opportunity to change that. And it all starts with just really educating ourselves, because the fear of other groups of people and racism really just boils down to uneducation. And that uneducation continues through families and through generations. And so a lot of times when you sit down and really talk with someone who has hatred in their heart for a certain group of people, they don't really know why. It was something that they heard their father say or their mother say, and so they learned that behavior. So that's where I want to just educate people on how to create relationships and start finding that common ground with other people and start to break down those barriers and that hate and that racism. Even in the smallest way I can do it, I want to help do it.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So thank you for what you're doing. You know, it's obviously much needed. So thank you. So how do you like to spend most of your time?
My personal time or my working time?
Let's do both. Let's start with your personal, and then we'll go into your working time.
Yeah, so my personal, I'm an outdoorsy person. So I love,
me too.
Yeah, camping. We're actually going camping this afternoon. We go camping in the summer pretty much 2 or 3 times a month. I have a 4-year-old son. He will be 5 next week, so I have to stop saying 4. I have a 5-year-old son. And so, we love to go out and do outdoorsy stuff and, give him experiences, things that my husband and I both didn't experience. We both, came from city areas, we didn't do those kinds of outdoorsy things. And so we love doing those things now. So that's my personal time.
Oh, cool.
In my working career, I do actually work for a college as well. I work with students and I help them get enrolled in college and navigate like financial aid systems and scholarships and all those barriers that really keep people out of school. And I work to help empower people to understand that college is for everyone. Anyone can go to college. There's so many grants and scholarships now. And I live in Washington State. We have like one of the best programs here for financial aid, for free things that people don't have to pay back. So I do that. And then I have this business on the side. So I spend a lot of time reaching out and doing trainings with organizations and individuals. I spend a lot of time doing webinars because a lot of times people are very hesitant to do this work. So I'll generally do free webinar or have free trainings that people can access online. Because then once they start to see it's not as scary and confusing as they think, it kind of breaks down that fear and they're like, okay, I can do this. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And I really spend a lot of time volunteering and trying to go out in the community because those kinds of things fill my cup. And at the end of the day, we don't know how much time we have. We're not promised anything. And I've learned that over the years, that money is it's not the goal in life. Really, it's about like trying to do something to make a difference to somebody is really important to me. So
exactly. I agree. Money isn't everything.
No.
I'm here to help and serve others, but I also know that, we do need money in this world that we live in. So the way I look at it is the more money I make, the more people I can go out and help. So.
Oh, that's so true too. I mean, realistically, if I could do what I did for free and afford to just train people for free, I would. But the reality is that we all need money to survive.
Yeah. And another thing, that I learned as a coach is if your clients have invested, let's say money into you, they do tend to take it more seriously and actually get more out of it than if you did it for free.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
And that's kind of you gotta kind of balance what you do.
Exactly. You have to be able to put your effort into it 100%, and you can't do that if you can't even pay your bills. It turns to turn into a lose-lose situation for everybody.
Yep. Yeah, like I know there's a program, and I'm guilty of it myself. There's a program I signed up for. I asked them how much it was going to be. I was thinking, $1,000, $2,000.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, it's free because we're new and we just want to get your feedback. And do you think I've taken it seriously? No.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
I feel bad, but it's like I have nothing to lose. You know what I mean? Like I didn't invest. So like to me, it wasn't really an investment in myself at that point. It was just here you go, you can do this. And it's like, well, now for me, it's that time to do something. It's like I got nothing in it. So yeah.
Yeah, if you pay for it, you're going to show up, right? I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
When I do my free webinars, I generally will have 15 people sign up for it. You know how many people usually show up? Like 2 or 3.
Exactly. Yep. I've done webinars myself, and same thing.
Yep. And it's like I'm there ready to go, but because even if they pay $10, they'll show up. But when they pay nothing,
they don't.
Yeah, unfortunately, but it's the way the world works.
Yep, it is. Yep. So sometimes doing stuff for free isn't actually helping people. It's kind of sad how it works, but that's how it is.
I heard this story one time that one of my mentors told me, and he said he had a friend of his who worked with women who had just had babies and helped them transition from, bringing a new baby home to going back to normal life because they're, sleep deprived and everything else. And she was really good at it, and she would work with them for a few weeks, but she did it for free. And she was only taking on a couple people because she couldn't afford to otherwise. And so she said, I think I'm going to quit doing this because it's just too exhausting and I'm not making any money. And he said, if you quit doing that because you're doing it for free instead of charging people, you're letting down all those mothers who need you, because those mothers would be willing to pay you for your services, but instead taking those services away, you're letting down thousands of mothers, maybe even more, who are suffering. So charge them and do that. And she does now. Apparently she does this now as a profession and makes really good money because these women need this service and they're willing to pay for it. So it just shows that it's nice to do things for free or do scholarships for people or make payment plans for those that can't afford it. Like I do, I give, discounts to certain nonprofits, but charging is so that we can continue to do this work.
Yeah. Yeah, because if we don't make a living, we can't continue.
And I think there's a little bit of a lag in my thing, so I apologize to everyone listening and watching. I don't know why I had a little trouble with my computer today.
Yeah, it happens, but we just keep on rolling through.
Yeah, it'll be okay. They can still hear what the message is.
Exactly. Yep. So, when you're talking to your clients or to a group of people, what is like your message that you like to leave with everyone?
Well, I think the main message I like to leave with everybody is we are seeing serious changes in the United States right now. We're seeing that, like the predictions from the U.S. Census are that in 20 years, the Caucasian population is no longer going to be the majority in the United States because we're seeing such an influx. So I think really learning to do this work now is so important because, like I like to say, once you exclude groups of people, whether it's intentional or unintentional, if you do not adapt and adjust your programs, your products, whatever it is that you do, and you exclude groups of people, it's almost impossible to come back from that. People will always remember that. Groups of people will always remember being discriminated against or being excluded. So it's so important to learn how to do this now, because if you are a business owner, a business leader, a professional, independent professional, and you don't learn how to do this work now, you're not going to be sustainable, and you're not going to survive the changes we're seeing in the United States. So I just say it's so important to learn this now before you basically get canceled, before you don't survive the changes.
Yep, exactly. I agree 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yep. So, let's say that you're helping someone or helping a group of people. Do you have like 3 things that you can teach?
Yeah, so when I help groups of people, I created a program because I experienced some really horrible things in my life. When I was 20
Mm-hmm.
years old, I up and moved to a small community with no research because I'm 20. I made really good decisions. And I moved from a big city to a small community, which ended up being the Aryan Nation capital of the United States. And I didn't know it at the time. And so Aryan Nation, if you're not familiar, is a neo-Nazi white supremacist hate group. So
Mm-hmm.
while I was there, I experienced my first Aryan Nation parade downtown. I experienced numerous amounts of racism, hate, discrimination. And it was so impactful that I went into DEI work professionally. I focused on it in college. And then I went to that field right away. And so when I started working in that field, working in city government, I saw that there were all these professionals who had all this training, master's degrees, PhDs, but still could not create relationships and make those collaborations with cultural communities. So I thought, well, it's not that they don't care, because I did a lot of research, a lot of interviews. It's that they don't know how and they're intimidated. They don't want to do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing. So how can I teach these people how to do this work in an effective way rather than just do the traditional DEI training? And then they're like, well, I got all this information, but now what do I do? So I actually created a 7-step program called Navigating Cultural Connections. And it's like really actionable and practical. So I lead them through one step at a time, and it's a different component of adapting and adjusting the way they do things. Even things as like how you set up a meeting with a cultural organization, how you reach out, how you find the organizations you want to reach out to effectively. And so I take them through these steps, and when they go through each step, they can use that training right away and immediately start to see progress in this work. It's not a secret special pill. It's really just a way to do things. So for one of the things that's very eye-opening to a lot of people is doing outreach. So I like to use banks as examples because banks are notorious for this. So say there's an event, say it's for Juneteenth, right? Which is a celebration for the African-American community. It's basically 4th of July for the African-American community. Very important holiday. It just became federal, 4 years ago? And so say there's a Juneteenth event, and this bank wants more customers from the African-American community because they see that there's a disparity there. So what do they generally do? They generally they do a transactional relationship. They generally will pay that organization to have a booth at that event. And then they go to that event. We've all seen it. They have swag, like cups with their bank name on it, stuff like that. They usually have like a sign-up sheet saying, sign up and get $300 off a free checking account, which is exclusive because not everybody's going to qualify, right? You have to have certain credit levels, certain deposit amounts, all those things, right? So it's already exclusive. And they stay all day, talk with people, give out free swag. And so at the end of the day, they're like, oh, I made a good impact. But they did not make a good impact because not one person from the African-American community is going to say, wow, you guys, I really trust Chase Bank because they were at our event today. They really care about the African-American community. That will never happen because it was just a transactional relationship. It was only to serve that bank and to get more customers. So instead of doing things like that, you want to try to build a transformational relationship. So instead of saying, hey, I'd like to have a booth at your event, you reach out to that organization and you find out, what does that organization need? Do they need volunteers for the day of the event? Do they need funding and volunteers? And you make yourself available, and don't just sponsor an event. You need to show up for an event. You need to show support for that organization. So generally volunteering, making yourself available, attending these events with your family, just going there just to show support of that group, of that community, is 1,000,000 times more effective than having a transactional booth at that event. And so even if you're showing up and volunteering or just attending, maybe you're not going to get a flood of new customers right away. But as you create that relationship, suddenly they are going to trust you. People are going to start trusting you from that community, and they're going to start doing business with you. So it's all about changing your mindset. Instead of wanting to get from A to Z immediately, you need to think about building that relationship in a transformational way so that you're building trust with that community. And then your goal of getting more customers from that community will naturally happen.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that and explaining it, because that's really important. Build that trust, build that relationship, and then don't look for the short term goal. Have long term goal.
Yes.
Don't, like you said, don't try to get from A to Z. Just take it A, B, C, D all the way through, and the outcome in the end is going to be much greater than if you try to take the shortcut.
Yeah, and it's going to be lifelong. It's going to be something that's going to build and grow substantially. And a lot of times doing this work, these relationships grow quickly too, because these groups, these communities, these culturally diverse communities have been excluded for so long that when they see that someone actually cares, it's amazing. It's amazing to know that someone actually cares about you, and they don't just, they're not just checking off a box because they need to get X amount of people that represent these cultural groups, and that's what, unfortunately, what most people are seeing is just a checkbox.
Yep, exactly. Well, you're awesome. And so for your 7-step program, how can people get signed up for that?
Yeah, so I have a couple different options. So I do in-person trainings for people or over Zoom trainings for organizations and individuals. I also wrote a program. So I have a manual, 7-step manual, and that works really good for organizations that want to have that to train their employees time over time again. I also am just recording a webinar that people can, it's actually getting edited and finished right now. So it's my entire program in a webinar so that people can buy it. Awesome. And that works really good for organizations too. It's about 3 hours long, and they can buy it, and then they can use it for all their incoming employees. They can watch it over and over again to get help. I also offer things like phone calls with people. So if there's an organization who has maybe just one concern or one issue they're dealing with, they can call, they can set up a phone call with me, but everything they want, they can find on my website. It's just marlenegodsey.com, and they can go on there and they can read some of my success stories. They can take my free, I always say, take my free 30-minute webinar, see if that interests you, if that's your style of learning. It's very practical. I kind of just tell you what to do, why it works, and why what you're doing is not working. I want people to be able to use it. If they can't use it, what's the point? If I give you a bunch of tools and then you're like, well, how do I use this tool? Then I'm not helping anybody. I'm not helping them, and I'm not helping these cultural diverse communities, right? So, but you can go to my website. I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll drop all your links in the show notes so then everybody can find you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's great.
Well, of course. So I got one last question for you. So my slogan is, your abilities are infinite. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think your abilities are infinite just kind of means that anybody can tap into something that they believe or they feel like they excel in or that they have to offer to people. Everybody has something special to offer to another person. It could be the smallest thing in the world, but it could be something that changes the life of another person. So I think being able to affect one person leads to another and becomes just this domino effect of change. So I think, it could be the smallest thing, and you could really just change somebody's day that could have had something bad happening in their life, could have been thinking bad thoughts, and maybe your one change, a good point that actually I think of when I think of that Yesterday
Mhm.
and this morning, dropping my son off at daycare, I was behind two different vehicles that both had the same sticker on the back. And it said, I hope something good happens to you today, to the person, driving behind them. And I saw it
Yep.
again this morning, and I thought, that's a sign. That's interesting that
Yep.
I saw that twice in in 2 days. So I think
Mhm.
really just, it's infinite what we can do and how what
Mhm.
we do, whether negative or positive, affects another person. And it can go so far. It can go on into generations.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I love that. Thank you so much. I agree. And that's why I do my social media videos daily. It's just I want to make sure that I help at least one person every single day. So yeah.
Great. That's wonderful. That's beautiful. I love it. That's what, that's what life's about, really. I mean, we can't take it with us, right? So
No.
all we leave is that mark and what people think about us or how they
Mhm.
feel or how they were affected by us when we die. So if it's negative, that's a shame. And if it's positive, that's
Mhm.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yep. Exactly. All right, Marlene. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Nick. I had fun. It was awesome. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this show, please go ahead and share it on your Instagram story and tag me here, the Nick Heart. Also, go ahead and share it anywhere else that you see fit, because the only way that I can grow this is by you guys sharing it. I don't sell anything on here. I don't have any sponsors, so let's just get it out there by word of mouth and help more people. Alright, everyone, remember, your abilities are infinite.